Hey, so I want to make a quick short video about Premiere just to get some basic stuff uh, out of the way. Presumably, all of you have used Premiere briefly, so you know whenever you open Premiere, it's going to ask you immediately where you want to save the file. And just like After Effects, Premiere is a referential editing software, meaning it needs a file directory, and everything that you place in the file directory does need to maintain its position, or else it will need to be relinked. So when I open Premiere, I have these tabs up here at the top that allow us to sort of move between the different layouts that will be beneficial. I typically use assembly and editing the most. Um, so I'm going to import some files. The shortcut is Command I, just like in After Effects, or I can go to File Import. And I'll use my video footage that I had in my haiku tutorial. I like to look at the footage more as like a list like this. It really doesn't matter however you prefer to view it, but we can see the ways in which we view it right here. So um, first things we want to do is we want to create a sequence. We can do that a number of ways. We can go to File, New, Sequence. This is going to bring up a lot of this information, and this is all generally based upon different camera types. If you have a digital SLR, you might want to use one of these. So let's do DSLR 1080p 30, because this is typically what this is like a video setting. So these, again, all of these are sort of like, they're based upon what camera you're using. And this looks good, so that's what we'll do. Or we honestly could just do ARRI. ARRI is a type of camera, and we could do 1080p. The 1080p, that is high def. That's what we see for 1920 by 1080. So I'm just gonna select that one. So, and we have our sequence, and we have this extra box now. If we are here, you can see it has a different sort of logo than the others, and it's also green. The others are blue, and we can rename this. I'll rename it tutorial, and I can drag my footage down into my timeline, and it's going to say clip mismatch warning. The clip does not match the sequence settings. Change sequence to match the clip settings. And no, we don't want to do that. We want to keep the existing settings, and that means that the clip that we put in it is going to have to fall into like what the sequence is. And so the screen capture that I had is not as large as the 1920 by 1080. So if we want to change that, we can go up to editing. We'll select the clip, editing, and then we see scale. We can bump this up a little bit. Perfect. All right, let's go back to assembly. Let's say that there's also another way to like start off this whole sequence sort of thing. I'm going to just actually delete my sequence right here, back to how we were, and now I'm just going to drag my clip down into drop media here to create sequence, and it creates the sequence. But remember, this has this screen capture that I made, it probably has different settings than what we would actually want. So I can control click on underwater 1, go to sequence settings, and I get all of this information here. And we can see, yes, the frame size is not typically what we would want. We want 1920 by 1080. And in order to do that, we need to have this set to custom. If it's not set to custom and it's set to one of these other things, you're not going to be able to change the frame size. So we want custom. We see that 16 by 9, and I'm going to change the frames per second to 30 or 29.97. Really, those work for video. And change to preview file format, and we can say OK to this. That's fine. It's just saying that it will need to redo any sort of preview material that it has already created because we are adjusting this sequence. And now I could come back to editing and I could select my clip, effect controls, and I could scale that up if I want to. So, first things first, I don't really want to hear the audio. I can come down to here and I can hit mute, and that's going to mute this track. And of course, we would want to definitely credit where we got this screen recording from, but for the sake of this, I don't want to see that ad and the YouTube bar at the beginning, and so I can come over here to the razor tool. I can move to my playhead, and I want to have snap and timeline turned on, or else see my razor does not snap to where my playhead is. But if I come here and then I move down to the playhead, it will snap to. So that's great. And I'm just going to delete that first part. Now, something important to know is that this empty space right here, this will render in your final render, and we don't want to have that. We want to make sure that we get rid of this empty space. So any empty spot in your timeline, just so you know, up to the very end, it's going to render that material. So I want to delete that. I can select a black space like that, an empty space, and I can delete. And then, so for example, I also have clouds here. Maybe I accidentally, I put this down here because I knew I was going to use it, but I didn't know exactly where, so I just kind of threw it at the end. That's fine, sometimes I do that. But when I start to work here and then I get real intent on this, I'm like, oh, okay. This is all my footage, and I've forgotten about the clouds that I had there at the end. So when I try and render this, it's going to render all the way until the 2-minute mark. Even though I'm thinking that it's only going to render about 23 seconds, it's going to render all this black space and then the clouds. And then it will cut off because there's no more footage back here. So just so you know, it's going to render to the last piece of footage that you have put in your timeline. So always make sure that you double check, and we can delete this empty space. And there we go. Say if we don't actually want to have sound at all. I don't work with sound that much within Premiere Pro. Sometimes I just think it's easier to do sound later. So I'm not saying you have to do this, but if you don't want to have your sound in your scene here in Premiere, we can delete our sound clips, but we do have to make it so that we are not selecting both of these at the same time. We can lock the top layer, and now you see the footage has been deselected, and I can just select my sound and I can delete. Then I can unlock again if I need to go back and make adjustments. So the more that you work in Premiere and in After Effects, you'll understand how to use both of them, what to use each one for, and you'll discover that After Effects really isn't that great of an editing software, and Premiere is definitely much better of an editing software. But they do actually speak together quite nicely. I'm not sure what I did here. There we go. That's better. So they speak together quite nicely. I'm going to come back to here and I can change my sequence name, and again I'll call this tutorial. If I wanted to, I could make a new sequence, and this is fine. I can call this tutorial 2. So the interesting thing about this is I can have maybe like two different parts, two different scenes happening at one time. If I wanted to work on one scene here in this tutorial 2 part, and one scene here in this tutorial 2 part, I have these two different sequences that I can be working with. So that's a nice way, again, to sort of stay organized and work with different timelines. I was talking about how After Effects and Premiere work together quite well. So what we can do, if we say we want to like do a better compositing shot than maybe what we can do here in in Premiere. So we want to have these two clips on top of each other, but really there's better tools in After Effects to make this work. So I could come here to File, Adobe Dynamic Link, and then I could say New After Effects Composition, and I will want this to be, it's because I had this selected, it's picking up on that, I believe. New After Effects Composition. Alright, I don't know. So 1920 by 1080 is what we'll say. 30 frames per second, that's fine. And I had After Effects open already, that's fine. And you can see I was messing around with this a little bit before, but tutorial linked comp 3. This is now over here, also in Premiere, and it made this here in After Effects. And so this comp right here, I can bring this down onto my timeline, and whatever I do over in here in After Effects in this empty comp right now, it's going to be right here. And I keep moving back and forth. So I want to take what I have here in my shot 1, and I'll copy and paste that over here into tutorial linked comp. Looks like that messed up the aspect ratio a little bit of that footage. It looked like it was a bit squashed together. So I'll just drag this down. Okay, let's see. Composition settings. Okay, that fixes it. Just messing around with some of this. Pixel aspect ratio. Typically we don't want square pixels. Just, I guess if it's not looking correct, then I would go here to pixel aspect ratio. and mess around and see if you can make it look better. So this is better, maybe even a bit longer than before. Okay, actually, now that I have refreshed myself a little bit, I just said that we don't want square pixels, but we do actually want square pixels, and so this is the proper size. And if you find that things are looking a bit weird, then yeah, come in here, make sure that this is correct, change it, and make sure that it's not distorted. So I'll say, okay, I can scale these up, and I can take my clouds, and I will, this is a pre-comp right here that I had already made, and I'll go back to here and looks alright. We're going to turn off the sound again. Great, so I'm going to hit save. And now when I come back here to Premiere, I can see that I have this footage here that I have now added in my Premiere composition. And it has not rendered. We have this red bar here because that means it hasn't rendered. So when we play it, it's not going to play back at the correct speed. If I want to zoom in on my timeline, I can hit the plus key, and that will allow me to zoom in a little bit, or I can hit the minus key. So in order to have this render, we can select it and hit return. And this is going to bring this up. Now, it's important to know this does affect your cache and your RAM. And sometimes whenever we work in Premiere, oftentimes it will say like, oh, you don't have enough disk space in your cache to do this. And so sometimes cleaning out the cache is beneficial. Cleaning out the cache doesn't delete any of your important files. It just deletes the files that it uses. Sort of it stores files within the Premiere folder to pull up sort of for like a faster recall, and it keeps those files within Premiere. So a lot of files that you've worked on in the past, it still has those in case you pull them back up. It still has those for reference, but some of these files you aren't working on anymore, so you may not actually need those files for reference anymore, and so you can clear out your disk cache whenever you need to in order to deal with that. And so now we can see this will play smoothly because it has rendered out. So that's one way to do it. We can also say file, Adobe Dynamic Link, import After Effects composition. If I wanted to come to my Haiku, After Effects, Haiku, and I say, if I specifically wanted, let's go to shot 1, and let's just add a shape layer, new shape layer, just so we can see this here. I'll hit File, Save. And now I'm going to import that shot 1. Okay. And I can bring this down, drop that there, and we see I have this here in Premiere. And I want to delete these so that I get rid of that empty space. So let's say I actually want to make a change to this, and in order to do that, I would go back into my After Effects file, and this is the comp right here, the one without the square that we added. And let's say that I want to add something into this. Let's say I want to add a circle, and we will make it yellow and put it behind the clouds. Maybe it's the sun. So in order to do this, I will now, I'll say save, and when I come back over here, you see, okay, that green bar that I had rendered out, it is now back to a red bar. So I made a change, so it's not rendered out in the sort of like RAM preview that we saw before. And if I want to have it play smoothly again, I need to hit return and have this rendered out. It doesn't need to, you actually don't need to have this you don't need to have them turn green in order to like render the final piece. If I just wanted to, if I knew that this was like playing correctly, and I knew that the timing was how I wanted it, and I didn't really have to change much about it, I could actually just go up to File, Export Media, and Render, even though I have these red bars here. The red bars, turning them green is only really important for helping edit in this timeline here. And of course, we could also cut up this clip that we have. We don't have to keep it the way that the After Effects comp has, so we could cut out that middle section if we wanted to. We could shorten it, and I can select that area as well. So this is the last way that Premiere and After Effects speak together. We've brought After Effects into Premiere. We can also actually bring Premiere into After Effects. So here I moved over to Tutorial 2, and I've made, I just added some footage from the other assignment that we were doing, just to like make this a bit clearer that we are doing a different example now. So I have Tutorial 2. I'm going to go over to After Effects, and I'm going to say File, Import. I can just Command Import, and I want to find that Premiere folder that we're using, or Premiere file that we're using. And this is the Premiere file right here. So I'm going to select it, open, and I want to select Tutorial 2. And now you can see I have Tutorial 2 right here. I can drag this down into my comp, and I have my edit. Now the one thing about this is, of course, we don't really have the markers of like the cut anymore. Right here, of course, we maintain that, but when we come into here, we don't necessarily have that. But this does allow us to, again, if we want to start doing some other sort of compositing, we could come into here and add any compositing material that we want, and we could hit save. And then if we wanted to come back into Premiere, now it's important to realize like what we just did in here, this is not linked. This composition, Comp 1, is not linked to Premiere Pro yet. If we wanted to do that, we could come up to File, and we could do File, Import. We could go to our After Effects file. What file is this? Haiku 1. Right, okay, so we would go to Haiku 1. Import, and we would of course select Comp 1. Now we could bring this down. Maybe a new sequence. New sequence. Okay, sequence 3. There we go. So keep existing settings. And we have our footage. So then we could come in here and we could do a lot more if we wanted to. We could cut it apart and sort of layer it if we wanted to, and change the editing a lot easier and quicker. Now I've done a very bad job and a very bad example of labeling things. You should never have something called comp 1 or sequence 3. Definitely make sure that you always label your material. Okay, and the last thing that I want to show real fast is just exporting. And you're probably familiar with exporting, but I want to cover it just in case. So I have this sequence here that I want to export out so that other people can watch it, other people can access it. I'm going to have this sequence selected, File, Export, Media, and here we can change a lot of different things about how we export it. But for the most part, it's fine to just use H.264 and all of these settings here. Of course, if we want to maybe reduce, like if we don't want it to be full HD, we could scale this down a little bit, but there's really no need to do that. We want to have it be HD because that's what we made it in, so we're just going to say match source again, and it will change that back. So then I'll just hit export, and it should give you this bar showing how much work is done. And that's it. Then I have saved my output to the desktop, and I can access sequence 3, and I'll be able to watch it, and I could potentially send this file to someone else if I wanted to, instead of having this Premiere file. So hope all of that was helpful.